Yeah, so Danielle, actually, when we were rehearsing for this, I said something, and I just was like, I mean, no one's afraid of white women. She was like, so she started laughing like that, and I was like, what? She was like, Abby, like, I'm afraid of white women. And I'm learning and because my black female friends have either called me personally on it, or have just said to me, did you see what just happened there? And the term that they use is called centering.
Yes.
Right? So and I think that people who have children understand this, because our children try to always center their own feelings, right? So our youngest has big feelings like her mom, and they are currently coming out in some inappropriate physical ways, right? So she will like smack her sister, and then when I am talking to her about how everyone's in charge of their own body and it's inappropriate to hit people, she wants to talk to me about how her hand hurts. Do you know what I'm talking about? Our kids do this, right? Our kids do this. They like broke the rules, and they're like, or they're doing something. They fell out of bed because they were, I mean, hypothetically speaking, because they were like wrestling on the bed, not that that would ever happen. And then they don't want to talk to you about how like they broke all the rules and they were doing everything they weren't supposed to be doing, right? They just want to talk to you about how their head hurts because they fell out of the bed, right? And you're kind of not there for that because it's 10 o'clock at night. Oh my gosh, right? So especially I've learned that as a white woman in conversations about race, my feelings are often centered, right? So I will say something racist, let's just call it what it is, not offensive, or I will say something that's racist, and then the black people in the room are like, so that's racist. And then the conversation, and then I start crying because I feel bad, right? And it's all genuine. Like I literally am not, you're cracking up. I'm trying not to manipulate it. I don't understand that I'm manipulating it. Mm-hmm. I start crying, and just like that, the conversation is no longer about how that was racist and how we can do better. Mm-hmm. The conversation is about how Abby feels bad, and Danielle made Abby feel bad by pointing out that what I said was racist.
Yeah.
So I'm learning to always be thinking about whose feelings or who's being centered, mm-hmm. right? Who is being who's being talked about, who's being put in the middle.
Yeah, and that was kind of my thing with the toys, is if you, which I had this conversation recently offline, about, I didn't grow up, my parents or my grandparents only bought me black dolls growing up. I did not have white dolls at all. But when I talk to my white friends, I'm very specific that they need to buy their children more than white dolls. However, I will not buy my nieces anything but a black doll. Or my son, because that was something I conquered this summer, was buying him a doll, even though every part of my upbringing said that he should not have a doll because he's a boy. And he's a black boy who must be like masculine. And I don't want to emasculate him. But now he has two that he takes care of and he loves them. But me and my husband both, we didn't even have to talk about it. We were in the store, we both grabbed black dolls, and we were like, which one do you want? And then when we got home later, someone asked me about that. And also because the doll didn't necessarily appear black, it was a lighter shade. It wasn't the shade that you usually see, because there usually are only one shade. And someone asked me about that. I was like, well, why didn't you get him a black one? And I was like, the doll is the same color as him. He's not as dark as me, so why would I get him something that doesn't look like him or isn't his shade, which it was an entirely different conversation. But also that I told them, you need to center more than white kids in your house. So they need to learn to play and imagine things with kids of color. On the same token, I won't center white people in our house, because everything once he leaves our house will center white people. So inside our house, I center him. I make sure that for the most part, there's just aren't very many black superheroes or things like that. And so far, he has not asked about action figures. So grateful for his school and their no commercial policy. He hasn't asked me for most of those things yet, so we don't go through all the Disney things and stuff like that. He doesn't see it at school, so he doesn't really ask me about it. But when I purposely buy things that look like a little kid, I try to make sure that it centers him. And I told my other Black friends, who are in the class, so there are also Black people in the class, I should say that. There are Black moms in the class, hi Veronica, who I tell them, and I say this to the entire class, for the Black moms or the moms of color in the room, you make sure you are buying your kids toys that look like them and that center them. For the white moms, you make sure you are buying your kids toys that don't just center them. So make sure that it centers the entire world. I want them to be represented. I just don't want all of their toys to look like them. And at first that was confusing. They were like, but why don't the Black moms have to do that? And it's because when our kids leave or when our kids turn on the television, there aren't things that center them. So they need to have a space where this is their safe space and this is where they can play with toys that look like them and that will center them. And then once they navigate the world, they can still see that. So my hope is that Braxton is still saying, okay, I have these things that look like me at home. I can play these stories and make up imagine all these different things. And when I leave, it's okay that the toys don't always look like me or the books don't always look like me, because at home is safe. And it's safe for me to know that. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
it does make sense.